Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into a news bulletin from Monday, March 17th. It's a wild mix of stories, actually. We've got a devastating nightclub fire, some U.S. military action, a shakeup in Israeli politics, and even a new soap opera making waves.
Lots to unpack.
Yeah, lots to unpack. So in this deep dive, we're not just going to read you the headlines, right? We're going to go deeper. We're going to look at the underlying issues, the things that maybe aren't getting as much attention, and hopefully come away with a better understanding of what's really going on in the world.
Absolutely. We're going to be connecting the dots and looking for those kind of hidden patterns, those surprising details that might not be immediately obvious from just reading the headlines.
All right, so let's start with that nightclub fire. Early Sunday morning, in a town called Kochani in eastern North Macedonia, a fire broke out in a nightclub. Sadly, nearly 60 people died.
Tragic. And even more concerning is that right away, the authorities started investigating possible corruption linked to the club's operating license. The interior minister actually confirmed that the venue wasn't even legally allowed to be open. It's a sad reminder that sometimes, as economies grow, safety regulations can lag behind. Makes you think about the real cost of cutting corners, especially when it comes to public safety.
Right, and the fire itself, the cause is just devastating. It seems that a band called D&K was performing, and they were using pyrotechnics, which ignited the ceiling. It was made of highly flammable material, so you can imagine how fast that fire spread. We actually heard a first-hand account from a survivor who described just utter chaos. They talked about a single exit, people being trampled trying to get out, and the devastating loss of their sister. Just a truly heartbreaking story.
It is. Really shows how crucial things like proper safety measures and accessible emergency exits are in these venues. You know, the lack of those seems to have played a major role in this tragedy. The good news, at least, is that the public prosecutor has promised a thorough and fast investigation, bringing in international experts from all sorts of fields. Plus, we're hearing that detentions and questioning have already begun.
Yeah, it seems like the government is taking this very seriously, which is good to see. They've already had an emergency meeting, declared a week of national mourning, and ordered urgent safety inspections for all the clubs and music venues across the country.
Hopefully this will lead to real change, to better safety protocols, and prevent something like this from happening again.
Absolutely. Now, shifting gears a bit to some global tensions, the news also highlighted a recent U.S. airstrike in Yemen.
Yeah. There's some conflicting info coming out about this. The Houthis, they're claiming over 50 deaths in the airstrikes that took place on Saturday. The U.S., on the other hand, is reporting that they killed several key Houthi leaders, although there's no confirmation of those deaths from the Houthis themselves.
It's really interesting that they haven't confirmed those deaths. I wonder if that's a strategic move on their part, or if it maybe suggests that the U.S. intelligence isn't completely accurate. What do you think?
It's a good question, and tough to say for sure. Could be strategic communication from the Houthis, or just the difficulty of getting reliable info in a conflict zone.
Right.
What we do know is that the U.S. claims these strikes were in retaliation for Houthi attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea. And the Houthis have actually threatened to start attacking ships again.
Yeah. But it's also important to understand the Houthis' perspective here. Mohammed al-Bukaidi, he's a member of the Houthi Political Bureau, and he called the U.S. action unjustified aggression. He basically said their targets are all linked to what they call the Zionist entity, which is often used to refer to Israel. They see this as a response to what's happening in Gaza, and al-Bukaidi actually predicts even more escalation in the region, blaming Trump's, as he put it, reckless moves.
It just highlights the complex web of conflicts in the region. The Houthis see their actions in the Red Sea as directly tied to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. And to get a sense of what this is like on the ground, a Yemeni human rights activist based in Sana'a talked about this feeling of fear returning. They said this escalation feels different, more like revenge, and without a clear plan for what comes next.
That's concerning.
It is. The Middle East is always a powder keg, but it seems particularly volatile right now.
Absolutely. And adding to that, our diplomatic correspondent pointed out that these strikes were different from previous U.S. actions. It's the first time they've directly targeted Houthi leadership in Sana'a. So it seems like there's been a real shift in the U.S. approach.
And that's likely what's prompted such a strong reaction from the Houthis.
It is. And we also have to consider Iran's role here. The U.S. Defense Secretary has made it clear that the U.S. will continue these attacks until the Houthis stop targeting shipping. He even accused Iran of supporting the Houthis for far too long.
So now Iran has condemned the U.S. strikes, warning of severe consequences if they continue. They're saying that the U.S. has no right to dictate their policy.
Seems like we're in a pretty dangerous cycle of escalation here.
Yeah. And the diplomatic correspondent's take is that these strikes are basically a warning to the Houthis, similar to how the U.S. has acted against other Iranian allies in the region. It's a show of force meant to deter further action.
It is. And speaking of internal tensions, we also had some interesting news out of Israel.
Yeah. Prime Minister Netanyahu just announced that he's going to fire the head of Shin Bet, Israel's internal security agency.
Which, just for context, is a big deal. Think of it like the FBI or MI5. They're responsible for national security within Israel.
Right, a really crucial role.
Netanyahu said he's doing this because of what he called ongoing distrust that's been growing for a while, especially with everything going on in the war.
But there seem to be two very different stories circulating about this. Netanyahu says he's lost faith in the Shin Bet chief's ability to do the job, but critics and opposition voices are saying there's something else at play here. They're pointing to an investigation into connections between Netanyahu's aides and Qatar during this conflict.
Which is particularly sensitive, given Qatar's ties to Hamas.
Exactly. And there are even allegations that some of these aides tried to improve Qatar's image within Israel. It makes you wonder if this is more about politics than security, you know?
Absolutely. Firing the head of your intelligence agency in the middle of a war is a bold move. And the fact that the Attorney General wasn't consulted on this decision makes it even more controversial.
Now, why is that so important?
Well, Israeli law says that while the government can appoint and dismiss the Shin Bet head, they have to have a solid reason, and the Attorney General has to check if it's legal before they can go ahead. So not consulting her suggests that this whole thing could be legally challenged.
Definitely adds another layer of complexity to the already tense situation in Israel. Switching gears again, let's talk about something happening closer to home, this story about U.S. deportations to El Salvador.
The U.S. has deported over 250 people, mostly Venezuelans, accused of being gang members, to El Salvador. And what's really interesting is the law they're using to justify this. It's a centuries-old law about the invasion of American borders.
It does make you think about how these really old laws are being applied in modern times, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it gets even more complicated because these deportations went ahead, even though a federal judge ordered a halt on the flights. That shows just how determined the Trump administration is to enforce these immigration policies.
Yeah, the U.S. Secretary of State actually publicly thanked El Salvador's president, President Bukele, for his cooperation in, quote, ridding the U.S. of violent criminals.
And it seems there's a financial agreement in place as well. El Salvador will house these individuals, and the U.S. will pay them $20,000 per prisoner per year.
Which raises some questions about why El Salvador is so willing to take these deportees. It seems like it's a mix of Bukele's support for Trump's policies and the financial incentive. Meanwhile, Venezuela has refused to take these individuals back, citing U.S. sanctions against their government.
And what's really striking is that El Salvador seems to be the only country that's agreed to take these convicted criminals. Shows the challenges the U.S. is facing in trying to carry out these deportations when other countries just aren't willing to accept them.
Yeah, it's a complicated situation for sure. All right, let's move on to a story that's a little bit more uplifting. There are two astronauts who are finally coming home after being stuck on the International Space Station for much longer than planned.
9 months.
I know, right?
And they were only supposed to be there for a little over a week.
Originally.
Their return got delayed because of some technical issues with the Boeing spacecraft that took them up there. But now, thankfully, a SpaceX capsule has docked with the ISS, giving them a way to get back to Earth.
That must have been quite the unexpected extended stay. We spoke to retired NASA astronaut Colonel Katie Coleman about this, and she clarified that this wasn't technically a rescue. Apparently, a SpaceX capsule with empty seats has been docked at the ISS since September. So they could have come back earlier if they absolutely needed to. But Colonel Coleman also shared some really interesting insights about life on the ISS. She was so enthusiastic, said she would have stayed even longer if she could have. She talked about the constant sense of wonder, the incredible perspective you get from orbiting Earth thousands of times.
She didn't seem bored at all.
Not at all. And you know, I've always wondered about privacy on the ISS, given the confined space. But she pointed out that it's actually quite large, about the size of two 747 airplanes with 10 modules.
So there's actually quite a bit of room to move around.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes you think about that whole experience of seeing Earth from space. I remember reading something about how that can fundamentally change your perspective on everything.
It's true.
And of course, being in space for so long does have some physical effects. Colonel Coleman mentioned muscle wasting and changes in vision, but she also said that those changes are actually really valuable for scientific research.
It's like a fast-forward button on aging, isn't it?
Right, exactly. And they've also learned how important exercise is for maintaining bone density in microgravity. Plus, she mentioned that NASA provides ongoing annual physicals for astronauts for the rest of their lives, which shows their commitment to their health.
Makes sense, considering the unique demands of space travel.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's switch gears one last time and talk about China. They're facing a pretty significant problem right now, a declining birth rate.
And this isn't a new issue for them. China had that famous one-child policy for many years, which they've since scrapped. Now they're actually encouraging couples to have more children. First, they upped the limit to 2, then to 3, all to address their rapidly aging population and the concern about a shrinking workforce.
Yeah, but those policy changes haven't really had the desired effect. Birth rates are still going down.
Right, which is why some local governments are getting creative. The city of Hohhot in Inner Mongolia is now offering couples nearly $14,000 if they have a third child, and any children after that.
That's a huge incentive.
Yeah, it is. To give you an idea, that's about double the average annual income in that region. And they're paying it out over 10 years in yearly installments.
But will it actually work? That's the big question. The news report highlighted that despite previous attempts to boost the birth rate, it's generally been declining across China. The one-child policy, while it was in place, was very successful in promoting smaller families. And those social norms seem to be sticking around.
Right, the long-term effects are still being felt.
Yeah. There was a slight uptick in births last year, but that was because it was the year of the dragon, which is considered a lucky time to have children in Chinese culture. So it's still uncertain if this financial incentive will be enough to change these deeply rooted trends.
It's a fascinating case study in how economics, culture, and government policies all play a role in shaping a country's demographics.
Absolutely. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about a new show in the U.S. called Beyond the Gates. It's a daytime soap opera that focuses on the lives of a wealthy Black American community.
It's set in a fictional upscale area of Maryland that's inspired by the real Prince George's County.
And the timing of this show is really interesting because it's premiering right as the Trump administration is working to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives.
Just to clarify for our listeners, DEI initiatives are basically programs aimed at promoting representation and fair treatment for people from all backgrounds.
Right. So this show's kind of going against the current.
It is. And what makes Beyond the Gates even more significant is that it's the first hour-long daytime soap opera with a predominantly Black family as the main characters. We've seen wealthy Black families on sitcoms and primetime dramas, but this is new for daytime TV.
We talked to a media professor at Cornell University about this, and she was really excited about this representation, especially given the current political climate around DEI. But she also pointed out that the show faces a challenge in appealing to both Black and non-Black audiences. That's something that traditional soap operas haven't really had to grapple with as much.
It's a good point. Finding that balance between authentic representation and broad appeal is tricky.
Absolutely. We also spoke to someone who lives in Prince George's County in the Woodmore area, and she was thrilled to see her community being shown in a positive light, with Black affluence being portrayed in a way that felt relatable. She also emphasized that this isn't the typical experience for most Black Americans, so it's really important for others to see this kind of Black excellence.
It's about challenging those stereotypical narratives.
Exactly. So it seems like Beyond the Gates has the potential to offer something new and refreshing to daytime television. It'll be interesting to see how it's received.
I'm curious to see how it all plays out.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, from the heartbreaking tragedy in North Macedonia to the escalating tensions in Yemen, the political maneuvering in Israel, the controversy over U.S. deportations, the astronauts finally coming home, China's demographic challenges, and even a new soap opera pushing boundaries.
And what's so fascinating is how these seemingly unrelated events can actually reveal bigger trends happening globally. The need for strong safety regulations, the complexities of international conflicts, the challenges of changing demographics, and the way different communities are represented in media, it's all interconnected.
It really is. So as you reflect on all of this, what's the one question or idea that sticks with you? How do you connect these dots? What do you think happens next? Food for thought as we continue to navigate this complex world.
Hopefully, by diving deeper into these stories, we can all gain a little more understanding.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Until next time.